turn over turn things over to Karen.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Okay, Amanda did not tell you this is my very, very first Zoom meeting. So I've done lots of talks uh, all over the country. Now I'm going to start sharing. We went through this. Now you're going to see the whole thing here for half a second until I start from the beginning. Okay, everybody can see that. Okay, shake your head, please. Okay, all right, great. All right, so I already told you that this is my very first time doing Zoom. Um, I'm going to switch over to the next slide real quick. This I'm not going to read this. This is just kind of for your entertainment. It's just a little bit of a background. I've been doing this for a long time. I think this is my 23rd year now for Michigan Heirlooms. I'm pretty sure it is. Um, Maybe even more. Uh, I started doing plants a long, long time ago, mostly because of my family. Um, I got into growing tomatoes, vegetables. Started at the end of my driveway, and oh, there we go. Okay, I'm looking at myself. Um, I'm sorry, you're going to have to let me get into the groove here because I'm used to looking at dozens of people in the audience, and right now all I do is see myself. Um, I grow about 30,000 plants now. Amanda, can you come back on the screen so I can at least look at somebody other than me? Thank you. Okay, that's so much better. Okay, so anyway, enough about that. I want to go into talking about heirlooms, and I don't know if any of you actually grow heirlooms. But I'm going to kind of speak to you like as if you haven't. Um, I'm going to tell you straight up, I'm really, really passionate. And the other thing that I didn't say is that I'm a staunch organic grower. Uh, in the we call it the CD world. I'm known as the historian. I keep a vast database of everything that has to do with certain seeds, and mostly it's because I think that you have to keep the history with the proper with the proper cultivar. So the true definition of an heirloom is that it must have been passed down generation to generation, and it's because it was loved. Now mostly obviously these are going to be uh food items, vegetables, right? But that's not to say that it isn't other plants or antiques. um but there is I will, yeah, okay. I need to see some other people on the screen because really I'm looking at the screen and I feel like I'm talking to myself. Somebody else pop on,
All
please.
right. Yeah, guys, if
There.
you want to turn your video on, feel free.
Okay. It just seems I feel like I'm looking and talking at the computer. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Um, what I want to point out here is that there is a there's a fine line between what a true heirloom is, and as I said, that it is passed down through usually familial lines, but that doesn't mean that you didn't get it from a neighbor or a friend or a relative. But on the other side of that, um, you see the word heirloom all the time now. And what they've done is, and excuse the expression, but they've bastardized it because to be a true heirloom, not only does it have to be passed down generation to generation, but it also must be open pollinated. And what open pollinated means is by sexual propagation, it comes true year after year after year. Now, there's a lot of different things to go in there. They could be bee crosses, and that's when they don't come true. But for the most part, a true heirloom, you you plant the seed, you plant, you harvest the fruit, you save the seed, and you do the same thing the following year, and it's replicatable. It always comes up the same. So how do you, I mean, where do you, if you don't have, like I didn't, even though my family were big gardeners, they were flower gardeners, there were no, say, vegetable heirlooms or honestly, heirlooms at all in my family. Um, Little did I know, but that's not true. So where do you go about getting heirlooms? Well, there are this picture, and I don't, can I use that little, you had a little slide. What is that? Annotate? Yeah, that's what I want to use. That thing. You were using it. I saw you using it.
What do you need me to
I
do?
think. There we go. See this right here?
Mhm.
This is Baker Creek. On the web they go it's rareseeds.com. These catalogs right here, and actually I have a copy right next to me. They're about an inch thick, and there are a lot of companies that you should buy their catalogs or get their catalogs for free, and they're really pretty much an encyclopedia. I literally took those pictures this morning from my cabinet. This one up here, is anybody familiar with Seed Savers Exchange? They're out of Decorah, Iowa. Um, there was a fella, his name was Kent Wheatley. He started it years and years and years ago, and the idea was that he was going to warehouse all these family heirlooms, and it got bigger than it possibly could have, and in fact, uh, sadly, he actually ended up divorcing his wife, who is now running it, but her name is Diane. And it's very, very commercialized, but anybody now, it used to be, these are called Seed Savers catalog or yearbooks, if you can see that word. And you, me, anybody would take your seeds and you'd mail them to them with a little description. And inside the catalog, it's all um, it's all listed and stuff. Those are invaluable. I mean, absolutely invaluable. And that's hence I got lucky. And if you see back down here where I'm looking, I actually inherited these yearbooks, and I'll show you how I did in a later slide. But um, heirlooms, they're to grow them, and I'm not even speaking just about the food crops, but they tend to be hardier, obviously, because they're passed down through the years, past, right? Um, they they represent history. They're most people also don't realize is that they're locally adapted. So, and this is another little weird little tidbit. If you grow, say, a tomato in your backyard, after 3 seasons, now it may be on a genetic level, but that tomato becomes uniquely yours, especially if you're not isolating or bagging the blossoms. On a genetic level, that plant has adapted to your backyard. So if you've got somebody that's been growing the same tomato for 40 years in their backyard, that is absolutely 100% a unique cultivar now, or as they call them, is a genome. I'm going to click over. The other, and I, this is my passion. I kind of coined this term. I found my tribe. Let's see here, 14 years ago. I went to my very first seed swap, and it was in Berea, Kentucky. I actually went to the same swap this past November. Um, the people there, as you can see in this picture here, I think there's what, at least a couple dozen in here. I have spent the night at most every one of these people's houses, and they come all the way from the far, far south. Um, I think right here, she's from Alabama. You guys know Ben. John Kuykendall is from. You become family, and then you find your tribe, and that's when you start your groove and you start sharing all these seeds. Now, my daughter, I'm just telling you, this is a shameless advertisement right here where I'm circling. our Indian Springs Metro Park here in White Lake is holding their first ever seed swap and sale as a result of, and again, I'm not sure if any of you have ever participated in a seed swap. Um, Ben right here, him and his wife Heather, for 8 years, they put on, well, I'm just going to say the largest seed swap in the country, only because they also did, and in the next slide you'll see, they also did Baker Creek's National Heirloom Expo seed swap, and I'm going to show you that picture. But if any of you guys are interested, the facility is absolutely gorgeous. You don't have to, there's going to be a bunch of vendors. There will not be food, but there'll be a bunch of vendors. If you don't have seeds, you don't have to. You can just come and you can trade. There's going to be vendors there that are going to have them for sale. On the tail end of that, I'm going to show you this next slide. This was last September. That's the same sign that you just saw on the last slide. That right here is the people at Ben's Seed Swap in California. And that went on for 4 hours. You really do find your tribe. You can find some amazing, unique seeds. It's a great thing. Um, I'm going to get a little personal now because we were talking about, you know, what they don't have to be a food crop. So, and I'm going to put for the 20,000 pictures I have on my computer. Sadly, this was the best picture I could come up with. Sorry about that. So this purple iris and this yellow iris is from my mom's mom, so my grandmother's farm. And if anybody's familiar with Milford, it is right on the turn. They used to own a 500-acre farm there, and actually Huron Valley Pharmacy is there now. These came from that farm in the early 40s because my mom was born in 42. I have no idea because they're both deceased now if where my grandmother got them from. But these same irises have been, so what are we at here? 65 years, right? 65 years unassuming, and every time they bloom, that's it's hard not to think about my family, and I share with everybody, anybody that asks. This yellow one is I'm having trouble with this one. It's not growing because the purple is taking over, so I'm actually about ready to lose it, and there's a reason I won't. Trust me, I won't. But um, that's going to come up on the next slide. This plant here is really near and dear to my. This is actually sitting on my kitchen counter right now. My dear friend Karen, who lives on Harson's Island, she gave me a cutting of this last year. It finally bloomed this year, and I found out that her her grandmother gave her mother that plant on the day Karen was born. So I'm now growing it and sharing it. And what you don't see in the little right here, because it's just a shelf, what you don't see is I already have a cutting that I'm getting ready so that's rooted up so that I can share it with somebody else. To me, that the this is heirlooms and blooms. I don't know how else to say it. This is how it's um it's very near and dear to my heart. So I told you that I was almost going to lose that yellow one. I won't. This is just looks like an unassuming daisy, but the fact of the matter is not. It is incredibly unique. That's was in my backyard. That daisy was another daisy that came from my mom's farm from the well, my mom was born in 42 and her sister was born in 39. So I mean, we're talking a long time, right? I didn't think I could kill that plant because if anybody that grows daisies, they reseed pretty steadily, right? Well, I think this was about 4, 5, 6 years ago. I went, where the heck is that daisy? Because I didn't find it. But I had saved seed. Weirdly, I had just grabbed a baggie and I had thrown some seed heads in the baggie and really didn't think anything of it. Well, that plant was gone. They did not come back. And just last year, found the seeds, started 12 new plants, and have them back growing again. But that is the part about being responsible for taking care of the heirlooms. And this is, obviously near and dear to my heart because it's my family. And sadly, I never shared that with my only other sibling. So nobody else in the family has it. I will rectify that. I will make sure that my sister gets it. And I wanted to tell you what makes that daisy unique, and I know this seems really silly, is I don't know if you can tell or not, but that's a cedar behind the plant, and I'm actually standing above it looking down. That daisy's almost 3 foot tall. It's a very unique daisy, and that's where I was telling you that it adapts to its environment. And that's I have zero supplemental irrigation on my property because I'm on acreage. Other than me schlepping around a hose, nothing gets watered. So if you don't make it on, or rather, I said that backwards. You you're a pretty tough plant if you're making it on my property. Now, I'm going to jump into vegetables because uh, I'm sure that I told you that's what I do for a living. But these are some pretty amazing stories, and 100% real. This is going to be you. You might be looking at that going, "That's a zucchini," and you would be right. It absolutely is a zucchini. But the story of the zucchini, which is 100% true, um, is this. So not that anybody wants to, but put yourself back into 2020, COVID. Okay. And I had a customer, Syrian customer. Um, I say it's Yanti, but I'm pronouncing it wrong. It's Yanti, and he's corrected me. I don't know how many times over the years, but I still call him Yanti. Anyway, he says to me, um, and whether or not you're aware that in those countries that are being decimated, right? They they've lost their seeds. They can't get them. And he said to me, he said, the only thing that I really want is I want, and it's called kusa. I've come to find out I want to be able to grow for my children because he lives here in the United States. I want to be able to grow our traditional dish of kusa. So I said to him, I said, there's not a seed in the world that I can't get a hold of, and I promise you I can get a hold of it. Okay. So I put a post on Facebook, and I don't know how many of you are on Facebook. My Facebook has to do with alchemy and herbalism and tomato groups. I don't, those are the only people that are on my friends list. So I put out a Facebook and I said, I found this seed, but it's in Australia. I said, and they will not ship to the United States. Is there anybody that can help me? And a friend of mine from high school jumped in on the thread and said, I have a friend from the Marines who's currently living in Australia. Send me here's his address, or we actually did that, in a direct message. Here's have the seeds sent to him. He turned around, sent the seeds from Australia back to Highland, Michigan, and in May of 2021, I had plants for him when he showed up to the greenhouse. And to say that there were tears shed, that would be an understatement. Now, the second story, and this is crazy. So this right here is, if you've ever heard of the USDA seed bank, right? They you can and you can't actually pull seeds out of it, but I did get away with it back in I think it was 2015. It was 2015, and I got, I think, 40 accessions is what they call them. Accessions, excuse me, is what they call them, because at that point I was I was growing dwarf tomatoes. That was my forte. I was looking at growing dwarf tomatoes and breeding them. So this fella here, his name is Brian Duncan, and true story, he was my boyfriend in sixth grade. And somehow or another, we're Facebook messaging, and there was, believe me, there was no, I don't know why, to tell you the truth, and it had nothing to do with romantic interest. Um, but he's telling me about how much how he's gardening, and he's sending me these types of pictures. These are his his garden beds in Afghanistan. And these, by the way, if I could zoom them in. Those are missile boxes, but they did have an Amazon base or an Amazon could get to them. So he was buying amendments and stuff like that and having it shipped to Afghanistan. Anyway, he somehow or another, he tells me about this tomato and he says, I've got this, I have and he was actually an Afghani. uh, and pardon me, I don't know anything about the military. I'm just going to say it the way that Brian, he said he was a friendly, whatever that means. Okay. He said he had, he was looking for a family heirloom that they grew there. And he said, but you can't get seeds anymore. And he goes, you don't happen to have any Afghanistan tomatoes, do you? And I went, you're kidding, right? And that is the exact, see, I'm like you guys can see me. This is the exact seed pack that I sent to him. I sent him seeds. Those are the plants, and that is the fruit that he produced that he was able to return to that person. That's kind of a long story to go the truth of if the USDA hadn't saved the seed, or actually they didn't, somebody sent it to them, and I hadn't pulled it out. But that's how circular heirlooms become. You get wrapped up in them and they become a life of their own. And that story's never going to go, it's never going to go away for me. Um, I'm going to give two stories now that are much closer to home, uh, equally as important. In 2014, um, I had two older gentlemen show up at my greenhouse. And fortunately, again, remember, I can't see anybody's video. So I don't know if any of you are Italian, but Italian men and tomatoes, they're pretty stiff back. They know how to grow their tomatoes. And I knew they were brothers, and I didn't say anything. They were kind of like snooting around my plants, and although they loved the plants, they were like, "Man, I'm unimpressed." Well, within about 45 minutes, they said, "Well, here's the thing: we have our own family heirloom, and we just call it the ugly tomato." And it was very, very heavy Italian accent, and I loved it. And anyway, long story short, they brought me that season, they brought me seedlings, of which I ended up growing out for them. And that whole thing came up, and it's a huge Italian family, and I mean huge, because the following year I had four brothers all at the greenhouse, and it was like a little family reunion, and they were tears shed. So now they send me this picture. So all the family members, and I'm friends with them all on Facebook now, they send me this picture and they said, this, this is the house. This is where the tomato came from. Now, none of them live there anymore, right? In 20, in May of 23, so not last season, the year before, this is Gildo and his wife. They went back. This house is that house right there. They went back and visited and made sure that they sent me pictures. And this is their pictures that they sent me. Of course, I have my own on the website. Now, part of this is that there was a time when I used to also ship. Not only could you come to the greenhouse, but I also used to ship plants. And I found myself that I was shipping Tori's Italian Brutta, all over the country. And I'm like, I'm finally, and I could reach out to them all. I go, you guys can't count on me. What happens if something goes wrong? What happens if I lose the seed and now your family heirloom's gone? You guys have to start saving your own seed. So, excuse me one second. So, and I did end up shipping anyway, or not shipping anymore. But the what I'm trying to say to you is that it is so important that we steward these seeds also so that they're not lost. But and there's an important part that I also want to add to that. If we went back to the flowers, which I'm not going to, um, life interrupted in 2014 for me. And that's a very, very polite way of saying that I got divorced. And I had to move away from this house, which is where my business is, right? And it it was I left everything here, and I'm on 3.5 acres, and it, it's there's a lot of gardens. Let's suffice that to say, okay? I couldn't take those plants with me, and when I came back, and I ended up getting the house back 2 years later, the, the plants were gone, but those that I had shared, I had the friends that came back and they gave me back my starts. And it occurs to me to say, make sure you guys go to that native plant sale. Make sure that you guys go to and I'm not sure if your chapter does just regular plant sales too, because I'm very active with the Hamilton County in Indiana Master Gardener program. I do a lot of speaking for them. Um, go to those plant sales, go and talk to the people that have given the plants, because if you don't have your own family heirlooms, that's a great place to start. It's a great place to start. It's important. And if you can only, if you can only steward one or two plants, that's okay too. But as gardeners, who in my opinion we're the greatest people on earth, when somebody walks up to you and they're looking at your plant, I have a particular peony in the front of my property. It's a tree peony that's been there. I've been in this house 33 years, so it's been there 31 years, right? And everybody gushes over it. And so I sit there and I tell them all the time. I go, and this came from here. I give them the history. I tell them, and very oftentimes people, my customers that are coming in for the greenhouse, they'll say, "Oh my God, that iris up there!" And I will literally grab a spade and grocery sacks, reuse grocery sacks, and I go dig them up. And they go, "You're kidding me." I go, "No, they're meant to be shared." And it's so important to share the seeds. Now, on that note, I'm gonna end my storytelling with this story here. Uh, there was a time many, many moons ago when I thought I was going to write a book about heirlooms. And I had developed a bio, and I sent it out to the tomato world, which is vast, by the way. And I said, "Is anybody interested in letting me?" The premise of the book was I had developed five five questions. You had to answer all the questions the exact same, and then I was going to put them all into a story, right? Well, everybody kept coming back to me and saying, "You got to go meet this guy named Spudleaf Willie. You just have to meet him. You have to meet him. You have to meet him." Well, it turned out that he lived in Traverse City, which isn't horribly far from here. Um, and I said, "All right, I'll go up." And so I called him. I think I must have emailed him first, and then I called him and I said, "Hey, my best friend lives very near you. She was in Harbor Springs." And I said, "I'm going to be in the area. Can I come and interview you?" And he said, "Of course." This is a picture that I took that day. And what I found was a man that had no use. Can you see the words tomato seeds? Can you see all this? I found a man that lived in a 14 by 14 cinder block room with no legs, no family. And under a year, I brought him back to Milford, um, became his power of attorney. And in that whole story, he was telling me about two seeds. One was called Grandpa Charlie and one was called Grandpa Willie. Uh, and I know that's a sad story, but I want you to know that his children, three adult children who had been estranged from for decades, reached out to me, and we are now still this close. And they said whatever they didn't even know anything about at all about these tomatoes, and I had all this history. So I said, and by this point, I never called him Spud Leaf anymore. I just called him Bill, right? I said, Bill, where are the seeds? And he goes, I don't. He goes, if they're not in everything, which would be all this stuff here, and I had it all. He goes, if it's not there, there's only one other person who would have it, and his name was Michael, and he lived in the UK. Well, coincidentally, I happened to have also known Michael, and I reached out to him via email, and I said, Michael, here's the story. I sent the pictures, and he said, Karen, he goes, that was 10, 15 years ago. He goes, if I have them, they're in the back of my freezer. I'm going to need some time. Well, sure enough, I think it was about 2 weeks later, he said, I found them. He goes, I don't know if they're still viable or not. He goes, but I'll send them. So 2 weeks later, because it takes that long to, by per post, I got them from the UK. I started them. I grew them out. Here's the result. And that is Bill holding his family heirloom for the first time in decades. And that was shortly before he passed. And I took out the picture of his kids that were there because there is a picture of his three children in there. But I can't think of a better story that details the importance of an heirloom seed. Not only that, but I gave his daughter Paige, her name is Paige. I obviously sent all three of the kids their family heirlooms, but Paige took it back to Boston and grew it out, and it became a fundraiser for her church. So the story just kept going and going and going. And Paige has five children, and in her and why I cannot remember her sister's twin sister's name is beyond me right now. She has two girls, and now they're growing them in their backyard. And I truly can't think of a better example of how a tiny little seed can affect so many people's lives. And I don't have my timer on, and normally somebody's behind me going, so because I don't have the
Karen,
ability.
this is amazing. You are a phenomenal storyteller, a magical person, and this is so interesting. You are just fine on time.
Okay, okay.
Keep
I
going.
really only have one more slide, and it's
Okay.
just something that I wrote because I'm not even sure. I don't. Okay, I'm going to. It really is. This is my very first time on Zoom, so I don't have my clock, and I've turned my phone off, so I don't know how long I've been talking. But um, I wanted
It's
to.
7:21. It's been about 35 minutes.
Perfect. So I had that down because I like to give room at the end for questions. Um, I just wanted to end with um no, no, go back. Where are you at? Right there. Open up from current slide. It is I did my best right there on that whole Spud Leaf Willis story not to cry. And I can truly I can tell you stories upon stories upon stories of stuff just like that. I don't think I can get my hands on it. Well, yeah, I can. Hold on a sec. There's a reason my background's blurred, guys. If you saw what my desk looks like. Um, can you guys see that?
Yeah, it looks like white powdery-ish.
They're bean seeds.
Oh, okay.
We could
Can you
always
see that?
Yeah.
So the story on this, oh, here we go. Can you see that?
it's kind of good, just gonna glare from the light. We should see the
Okay.
lid, but
It's
yeah,
Yeah,
it
we
was written.
Burpee White Pencil Pod. So her name was Lois Spitter. And I think it was 10 years ago. Shows up at the greenhouse, and I'd never met the woman before. And she said, I have a bean that I've been growing for decades. I'm not going to quote it, for decades. She said, it's not doing that great anymore. And she goes, and she told me the story. She said, I bought it from Burpee, and they only sold it for 1 year, and it was called a white pencil pod, and they never sold it again. But as I told you earlier, if you grow something in your garden for 3 years or more, then it acclimates to your garden, and it does become unique. But in this case, that's not really what I'm saying. Um, she had grown it for a minimum, I know it was a minimum of 20 years. They never offered it again. And she said, I want you to try to grow it. And she hands me a baggie, and it's got about 10 seeds in it. And she goes, these are the last of them. And I'm like, oh, no pressure there. None. Right. And I grew them out. Now, then I went to, and if I went back a bunch of pictures, I could show you. His name is Russ Crowe, and him and John Kuykendall probably they definitely have the United States' largest bean collection, mostly Appalachian, because they're a food source, a staple food down there. But Russ Crowe does a lot of them from all over the world. Anyway, they both said there is no other white pencil pod available anywhere. So what she has there. So naturally, what I did was I grew them all out, and I took them to all the different swaps, especially the Appalachian swaps, sent out all the seeds. I've had the same things with other family heirlooms, but there was just so many of them. I didn't know which ones to share. And it becomes actually Ben, because Amanda, you said you guys know who Ben Cohen is. He must have
Yeah,
talked to you guys before.
a few years ago we had been talked for. It's been a few years, but he had
Okay.
spoken for.
He actually is commercially selling one of the beans right now. It's called Rose's Bean on his website, that was given to me by Tony Audia and his family from, and I'm not even going to pretend I can pronounce that word, right? They, so I grew them and I did pounds and pounds of them. And I sent them out, and Ben said, "Hey, can I list them?" And I said, "Sure, go ahead. Get them out there. They're a fantastic bean." But that's how it happens. You you come into they become your family. There's no other way to say it. They become your family through the seed. So I'm going to do my last slide, and then anybody that wants to ask questions, I would love it.
I had a couple questions for you because you've been talking about your greenhouse. Is it, can people still visit you at the greenhouse, or is that open to the
I
public anymore? Or?
I Oh, it's 100% open to the public. Um, and if you guys don't come and show up to the greenhouse, then I'm not going to be able to make my house payment. So yes, please. Um, but I'm only open from mid-May to about the 10th day in June. It's a pretty short window. Most all of my orders come via the website. But the walk-ups and walk-ups are 100% welcome. And yes, it is no joke. I promise you, because I pay for the pots. I sell about 30,000 plants a year, but of them, there's about 5,000 that I never list on the website because I don't want people just um, ordering and not coming through the greenhouses, just picking up their pre-orders. And I will have some really random stuff there. People will never know what I have. So yes, yes.
Definitely have to make sure we venture out there then. Um, what has been your favorite heirloom to grow? Like the one that, is the most successful, I guess. Do you have like a favorite?
No.
They're all your favorites.
Um, the the, the challenge for me in that my anything would be a favorite. Okay. Well, I think she's sitting right next to me. She's sitting right next to me. Um, Alice's, well, it turns out that you can't see anyway. One of my best friends lives on Harson's Island, and if you guys are, oh, it's an island right there in Lake St. Clair.
Hmm.
I have a small cottage there, and my best friend lives there, and her mom, who is 86, she's been gardening far longer than I've been alive. She found a tomato 3 years ago. Um, and then when I don't, let's see here, I think it's behind her shed up against a fence. It's 2.5 feet wide by 20 feet long. And she packs them in there. Anyway, she starts all her own seeds. She found a tomato that was a heart, and it was 1.04 ounces because I have the original from her counter and then I weighed it. Anyway, so I've renamed it Alice Ann's Heart. Um, and it's a cross between yellow pear. She grew ox heart that year, but in there somehow or another, and this is why I love the genetics, was green zebra, which is a green when ripe. Anyway, um, she my my favorite part is growing that out, which by the way, it takes 8 years. People don't know that. It takes you 8 years to stabilize a variety before they become true. And that's for tomatoes. They can get away with it if you know somebody in Australia, you can cut it to 4 because we're across the hemisphere, right?
Hmm.
Um, I think that it's the chase. It's the chase. It's the history. It's my favorite part. It's finding things that people say I can't find. Um, I promise you, if you have access to the internet, you can find it. If it's around, you can find it.
So you've
That's,
done the process with stabilizing an heirloom for 8 years then?
well, at
Or
that point, they're not heirlooms. They're called open pollinated.
okay.
So that was the other thing. And I thought about putting that slide in. Um, but so there's all kinds of different heirlooms. There's true heirlooms, which is why I put the word true. There's created heirlooms, there's mystery heirlooms, and there's commercial heirlooms. So going backwards, a commercial heirloom, hopefully some of you guys vegetable garden, or maybe you've at least heard of the tomato Bonnie Best. It's been around for a bazillion years, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
This is Ruby will contact.
Anyway.
Okay, uh, that's an open pollinated tomato now, but it's been around since the early 1900s. So by definition, it's an heirloom, but it's a commercial heirloom because at one point it was a hybrid and it's been dehybridized and it's stable. A created heirloom is something where there's a lot of backyard breeders. Actually, totally tomatoes out of Florida, they do it also. They'll take two heirlooms, cross them intentionally, and create a new tomato. It's stable. It, it's got heirloom genetics, but it's not an heirloom, it's created. It's open pollinated. And then there's mystery heirlooms, which are truly just a bee cross. which means you grow a tomato, a bee came in and transferred the pollen, and you got an amazing tomato. My golden pineapple is something like that. So, but did I intentionally do a cross? Yes, I did.
Oh, that's
Um,
amazing.
it didn't turn out as great as I thought it was. So,
Hey,
oh well.
more than some of us can say. At least you tried. I think we have a question from Sally.
Yeah, hi Karen.
Hi,
Great to
Sally.
thank you so much.
Thank
In
you.
2018, we had a speaker at our educational garden conference named Craig LaHoulier,
I
and
know I was there.
he introduced us to let's see, I forget, Cherokee Purple
Hmm?
tomato, and I kept those seeds for several years. Last year, they didn't grow for me, and I'm wondering if that's a seed that we can get from you.
Um, Cherokee Purple is,
I
yeah, I
think
have,
he actually named it.
no, he did not. No, no,
Oh,
no.
okay.
Craig
Okay.
and I are friends, and I was
Okay.
at that conference. I was the one selling tomatoes at that conference.
Oh, good.
Stairs outside of that conference. Anyway, no, Craig did not name that. It was sent to him,
Okay.
and um, the it is now commercially available. You can buy it at Bordines. You can buy it at Walmart. You can buy it anywhere.
I've seen the plant around, but I had my own seeds, so
Hmm. From
I
his
grew
tomato
my
or where?
own. I'm sorry.
Did you get the seeds from him or where did you
Yes,
get them
yes. He gave us all seeds when he was there.
Think the seeds he gave us might have been from.
Amanda, don't you grow those too?
Yeah, I don't know where my last batch came from. I've gotten them from a couple different places. Probably Bourdines is a likely bet. But I think when Craig gave us some seeds, I think most of them were from Seed Savers, if I remember
Okay.
right.
Okay. You're probably right.
I could be wrong, but
You could be right.
Karen, at
Yes.
that same conference, the
Mm-hmm.
year before, Craig was a speaker at our conference, and then he went to Taylor the next year. And
Right.
one of our members had an heirloom tomato that was at a senior garden in the Southfield at the Mary Thompson farm.
Mm-hmm.
And the gentleman had been growing it for 20 or 30 years at his house. And his name was A.Z. Cutler. Greg actually sent those seeds to Mike Dutton at Victory Seeds,
Mm-hmm.
and the AZ Cutler Garden from that Southfield garden were in the Victory Seed Garden catalog next year for sale. Craig had
Culter? A
it's AZ-CUTLER, and it was in Victory Seeds,
Okay.
and Mike Dutton had produced that one. So it's the Cutler tomato. But Craig was the person who got that to Mike Dutton at Victory Seeds. So that was, and there was a write up in the catalog that year, which was
I
nice.
I will actually I don't know why. You know why? Because I'm not used to being on a computer. I'm used to being in front of people,
Right.
and I think you can see everything I'm doing. I'm like, and there's my list. I need to place my order with Victory Seed. So I wrote it down. I will be ordering those.
Yep.
I will grow them out.
Well, I have one other story, but it's a plant. My
Hmm.
mother was in England after World War II and moved back to the United States and started a garden in 1948. And she started a coral bell. She literally moved that coral bell from every garden she had since 1948. It's now in Traverse City with family friends, and it's still in bloom. And
Unbelievable. Uh,
yep,
so you don't
and
have it?
I, like you, had an upheaval and got divorced, so I
Mhm.
moved it back to Traverse City to keep it safe. But I do have a Christmas cactus that my mother got. I'll be 67. She got it when I was a child and it was a good size. So it's probably 75 years old. And
I
unfortunately,
love it.
I lost about 2/3 of it because at my last apartment, it didn't like the climate. It regenerated this time. I'm ecstatic that Mitzi's back. because it's named after Mitzi, who gave it to my mom in the early 60s.
Are you taking cuttings and sharing?
I have not taken a cutting of this one because there was so little left and I didn't know what it was going to do until it moved to this apartment. And it's getting better.
Good.
So
If
yeah.
for no other reason, take a cutting for yourself too. And the reason I tell you that is that picture that I showed you of my Christmas cactus, uh, right next to it, that little baby. I kind of told a little white lie because the truth of the matter is my daughter and my 14-year-old and 3-year-old granddaughter also live with me, and the 3-year-old was taking a bath in the sink and took the dish soap and put it in the cutting.
Oh no.
So the point is that cutting's gone. So when I tell you now that Mitzi is perking up, take a
Yep.
cutting for yourself as an
Oh yeah.
insurance policy.
After my mother passed away, we spent an entire summer giving her flowers to everybody in Traverse City. And my sister-in-law, they're in Colorado, Ohio, West Virginia, Michigan, all over the place.
I
So
love that.
yeah, we share them all. We love them.
I love it.
Karen,
Like you said, it's our connection.
Well,
what's the best month to visit you?
May,
Uh, May?
yeah. Now I am closed on Mondays. Are you talking about it as a group? You guys want to come out as a group?
Well, yeah, I
Oh,
mean that would be amazing.
because
Um,
I'm closed on Mondays, but I'll open it for you guys. I live here. It's not like I go anywhere.
Not a big
In fact,
commute.
I don't. You know, yeah, I don't come
folks,
about
this is why we need a trips and tours person.
yeah, come about mid-April. I don't leave the property until mid-June.
Sure.
I don't. But you guys are more than welcome to come out on any Monday. I open, I think, May 14th this year. Your phone's right there. Hold on. Pretty sure I opened May 14th this year. Yeah, May 14th, and then I close, I think, June 9th. So any Monday, if you wanted to make it private, if you came out on a Sunday, it would be okay. Uh, you don't want to come on a Saturday because it's a zoo. Um, but yes, please, I'd love to have you guys.
Who else has questions for Karen or a story to share about heirlooms?
I really feel like the whole topic, like you could pick a plant and the stories that if you followed the path, like you've been sharing so many great stories with us. It's really fascinating. It's like its own little anthropology of a growing organism. It's really fascinating.
It,
Really
it,
appreciate you sharing that with us.
it is, but you know, the truth is that the plants aren't much without the people behind it.
Exactly.
Any
That's the connection.
any
So,
chance you might still write that book? I feel like you need to.
Yeah, I'd buy it.
you know, we'll see what the universe has in store. We'll see. I don't know. It'd be hard to keep up with Ben. Honest to God, it would.
Everybody's
It
unique.
was
Everybody has their own story. So he can tell his and you can tell yours and we'll all listen.
it was interesting. Janet McConovich, this was many years ago at Bowers Farm, was showing how to divide a plant. And she brought a peony that had been her grandmother's peony. And anybody who was there, she was just taking an axe and cutting apart the plant. And my neighbor and I both ended up with Janet's grandmother's peonies in our garden down in Southfield.
I love Janet,
And
and it makes me smile to even hear her name. I
Yeah.
love
yep,
Janet. I love her.
it
I
was
don't think
just
she's
such a
doing this anymore.
simple, it was just such a simple, beautiful pink, simple peony that was just, you look at it and you knew it was from Janet. So it was extra special.
Okay. I got to tell you a peony story. See, you guys are gonna be here all night if you want. I can tell stories all day long, right? So Well, my son's 29, so 30 years ago, I used to work as a waitress in a bar in Grand Blanc. And the only reason I had to drive that far is because my mother always told Highlands is this itty bitty little town, and she says, you don't work in a bar and in your own backyard. So anyway, there was an old guy, and then when I say old, Gene was uh, very late 80s. And he would come in every single day and he'd have a short little draft beer. But in the spring, he would bring in mounds of white peonies with a blood red center. And this
Ooh.
this would go on and on. And so finally, and of course, I became friends with him. And I said, Gene, I have to get some of that peony. Well, he brought me a root, and it was called Old Man Jean, right? That was out in my long flower bed. Since got rid of that because it was like 100 foot. It was ridiculously, and I don't think ever it was weeded all at one time, just for the record. Um, and I lost it. Of course, there was that divorce in there. I lost it 2 years ago. I found it in my berm, which is my compost pile along the back of my property. I dump everything there, and I found it had bloomed from being dumped.
Wow.
True story. True story.
Amazing stories. Let's just kind of keep on going. Did anybody else have any more questions for Karen tonight? And feel free to use chat or just chime in if you want. We can ask them for you too. So
Oh, I could, yeah, because I can't see the chat on the bottom.
yeah, you can pull up the chat if you want, but it's kind of quiet at the moment. You should be
Okay.
able to. If anybody else doesn't have anything else to chime in with, if you're, do you have anything else for the night, Emily? Or
Well, I was gonna say we can count this as one educational hour. Um, and I'm seeing some thank you, Karens. We so appreciate having you, and thanks again for your flexibility in doing it on Zoom. And we will see everyone next month.
yes, thank you
Thank you
very much.
again, you guys. Thank you, and have a great conference. Jackie did reach out to me and ask me to be a vendor at the conference,
Mhm.
and I just said I can't do it this year.
Too crazy.
I it was well, you're juggling hundreds of plants 2 months early.
Yeah,
Do you think you'll be able to come
we
and
still have.
enjoy it?
Yeah,
When is it again? It's
It's
April
April
something.
26th, Saturday, April 26th.
Um, I I don't think so.
mm,
That's okay. But we'd
Who's
love
your
to see you
speaker?
there any year.
Who's your speaker this year?
Oh, we have four incredible speakers, and I can tell you who they are,
we
or
got
Sally can if she wants to jump on. But I can pull up the email.
we have Stacy Hervella,
Okay.
uh Charlie Nardozzi, Susan Martin, and Bill Iams. Am I pronouncing his right?
I miss.
Imus.
Uh-huh.
I knew I was gonna slaughter that last one.
It's okay. Susan Martin, yeah. Bob Imus is discussing conifers for today's gardens. Charlie Nardozzi, a new look in ecological gardening and companion planting. Stacy Hervella, seeing shrubs, a celebration of the backbone of the garden. And Susan Martin, an insider's guide to buying the best plants. So yeah, it's a great day. It's going to be at Oakland University. Tickets will be $95. But it includes continental breakfast this year, and I'm thinking we might have as many as 20 vendors. Uh,
Wow.
Live jazz, great food, much better food this year. It's just we finally got back to our old jam of having a lot of space available and
The
good
venue's
food
beautiful.
and four great speakers. So we're very excited.
It sounds like you're going to have a great conference.
Yeah, it will be.
Okay.
All
Amanda,
right, I don't,
would you
I'm
say
going to, I'm going to click. I actually really don't know how to,
I can stop your sharing if that's what you'd like.
there we go.
Okay.
Ha, I did it. Okay. Thank you again, you guys. And a little thank you to my puppy Pug who didn't bark this whole time, and I made all the kids leave the house. So thank you for my whole hour alone. All right, I'm going to
Karen,
jump off.
Right. Thank you so much for your
thank
time,
you.
Karen, and
Thanks
thank you
very
for your
much.
presentation.
I thank you. I appreciate it. That's pretty funny that I said I'm going to jump off because I really don't know how to. So there's that.
We'll throw you out.
Oh, leave. There we go. Thank you again, you guys.
Thank you,
Bye.
Thank you,
Karen.
Karen.
Thanks, Karen.
You're welcome.
and the rest of you are also free to click leave.
Night, everybody. Good meeting. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Everyone.
See you next month.
See you
See you
see you
then.
next month.
Person.